So before moving on to how CDB is used in a TDM, we just want to see what are all the different important things to consider in TDM and especially why we need a TDM. So when we say why, there are four main areas we think that demands a test data management. One is the current way of working, the distributed environment. Like in a current scenario, we have a system where people are working from different places. Like development is happening in one area and testing is happening in another place, whereas actual data deployment is happening in different location. So we have such a distributed environment and data needs to be moved from one location to another location, and the problem is the volume of data and the sensitiveness of data, because when the data moves out of the organization, it has to be sure, we need to be very sure that no sensitive data goes out of it. So that's a huge challenge in a distributed environment. And also currently we are working on an agile way of working, and agile and DevOps are the key things happening in the IT industry now. So time to market is the key factor. So we need to be very sure that the whatever the changes happening in a week or two, couple of weeks time, that changes are tested properly and goes to market without waiting for the data to be available to them. So that requires data to be available always, and whenever a tester requires, they should be able to provision it either by themselves or even with a team which involves, but they should be able to provision at the earliest. And the other key area is the data complexity, because now we moved from a long way of from legacy to current systems, but even a lot of organizations, especially in the banking area, still uses legacy systems, either it being a mainframe system or a tandem. And even if it is a modern way, they may have a Oracle server, SQL server, Teradata, Hadoop. So we have data scattered across multiple places, multiple environments, and multiple databases. The huge challenge is when a new application is introduced, the data needs to be actually procured from multiple source systems where they are coming from. For example, we may need to take data from a tandem application and a SQL server, which may be actually used for analytical reporting. So if I need to test that analytical reporting application, I need to first get the synchronized data from two different environments and ensure the data is available in a proper format. So that data complexity is a huge demand which requires TDM. And the next thing is mainly related to what we do, how we do the testing. Because for a developer, when they do unit testing, the way they do testing, unit testing is entirely different from how the QA testing happens, how SIT happens, how UAT or performance testing happens. Because if I am doing a performance testing, I am not bothered about the functionality of the data, but I am very much interested in having a huge volume of data available so that I can see whether the application is able to handle that huge volume, and whether it can even I can see whether the stress on the database as well as at the application level with a huge volume. Whereas if I am doing a UAT, I need a very minimal data set, but at the same time I need to ensure that the data coverage is there, because when they do UAT, they will be testing for all the business scenarios. So if a data is not available when for a business scenario, they will not be able to test. They don't bother about volume, they bother about the availability of a specific test data. So the requirements changes for different types of testing. So we need to ensure for every for a different purpose of testing, the different requirement will be there, and how the data can be available for that requirement. So that's one of the requirement for test data management. And the last but not least, the data security, because that is the very key factor. Though we actually mentioned as the last one, that is the primary reason we should go for TDM, because as we talked about in the first three sections, whether it is due to distributed environment or complexity or type of testing, whatever data is visible to the tester, we need to ensure the data is insensitive. They shouldn't be seeing any sensitive information or a confidential information of a customer when they get the data for testing. That's going to be a huge challenge, because generally what we do, we take the data from production. Either we may give provision the full data set, or then we may do some subsetting and then provision it. That is not a critical part, but the critical part is how we are going to ensure the sensitive data information is cleansed and provisioned it. So generally what people do is they use some custom scripts to just remove those sensitive information and provision it. But the problem is when they remove, their business logics they will lose the business logic, and the data available to the tester may not be meaningful. So it is very critical that we remove the sensitivity of the data without losing the business nature of the data. So these are all the four areas that demands TDM.